Um, I'm trying to think of something, you know, so much happens through life. Now, what else do people do?
Well, I remember you've told me stories about during the Depression, how
Oh,
he
yeah,
was
the Depression.
he was very
Well-
diligent with trying to collect the
Oh,
bills that were
well,
outstanding.
yeah. Oh, have I mentioned that to you? And he always shared this stuff with the family.
Right.
I mean, and different things that I think he maybe accomplished that he was maybe was rather proud of and wanted us to learn from his experiences. Well, yeah, during those hours, he really went to work at 4 o'clock every morning. He was always there early and worked. I remember we never had dinner until 7 o'clock at night, because that's about the time he'd get home. And one of the things he had us do, he had sort of a separate job he kept the books for a little business called the Southwest Press Clipping Bureau. And as soon as the children in his family went to high school, and by the time we were sophomores in high school, he had us go down there and work to keep the books. You know, we'd go down there for an hour or two after school, not every day, but when it was necessary. And he taught us accounting at that. That was one of the things I did in high school, other than just going to school. We, of course, went to the Swedish Lutheran Church until I was about 10, and they were using Swedish entirely at the Swedish Lutheran Church.
So did you understand Swedish
No,
language?
we
Oh,
didn't.
you just kind of sit there
So
and listen?
we said prayers in Swedish. We didn't know what we were saying.
Yeah.
Both, you know, at mealtime always and at bedtime always. But at the church, the father presented the idea that it was time that we're Americans and we should give up the Swedish in the church.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't. They would not. The old folks wouldn't change. So he took his family and we became Presbyterians. When I was about 10, I remember that very well. Let's see. Oh, then about the Depression. See, I was in college during the Depression. I entered college in 1931, graduated in 35. See, those were the bad years of the Depression.
The first 5 years of the 30s.
Yeah, and
You were able to stay in school, though. I mean, how?
well, we were fortunate. You see, we were never hungry or
Yeah.
anything, and I didn't have to. My work did not help support me going to college. I mean, Father took care of all those things.
He had saved enough so that
Yeah, I
his
guess.
investments
And
are...
so, but I majored in economics, and we were, of course, very much instilled with what was going on in the world, and about the people who were suffering, the men that were out of work, didn't have work. And although, you know, most of us didn't really see a lot of it, but it was terrible for families. It's awful not to have a job. And there was a lot of that at that time. And now the other students at college, a lot of them came from farm families, and they were families that would have been prosperous in normal times, and later did really prosper a lot. All farmers in Kansas prospered a lot, but so many of my friends were really, really hard up. You asked about my impressions of the Depression, and that was the most real to me, the experiences that my friends had. Not that we felt rich by any means, never did, but we always had plenty.
Yeah.
But you know, my professors were very liberal in their ideas and spouting. Oh yeah, there was a lot of communists. A lot of us really got pretty sympathetic to communism.
That
in those
idea
days.
all of a sudden didn't seem quite as bad? at the
No,
time?
it didn't. Not at all. And of course, this was a universal reaction at that time to capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And Father was very unhappy with some of the ideas I was getting at college. And
So he knew the times would get better eventually, and that.
Well, yeah, actually, and then, so along comes another war, and well, not till really 1930, well, 41 we got into it. Things were getting bad, but Dorothy and I went to Europe, in 1937, which was, they were hot years there leading up to the war in 40.
Where in Europe did you go?
Well, we went to, several countries. Really, the idea was Father wanted us to go to Sweden, but we did manage to get to expand the itinerary. Considering we spent 3 weeks in London, and then we spent about a week in Paris and several days in Berlin, and we were in Sweden for 3 or 4 weeks. And that was it. Oh, well, Denmark? Well, whatever. Yeah, Denmark and Sweden. Oh, Norway too. The Scandinavian countries. So that was nice that we could do that. And then, oh, I forgot. I got married in 1939.
Yeah.
And we lived there in Topeka. And
To great Grandpa Ralph.
Ralph was,
Hoover.
yeah, Ralph was a Hutchinson boy who was working in Topeka. And so we got married in 1939, and in 1940 we had a baby named Ralph Jr.
Named Uncle
We
Ron.
call him Rod. And
He does seem to go by Ralph now, doesn't he, at work?
oh yeah,
It's just Rod within the.
his legal name is certainly Ralph. And yeah, I think it's, other than that, it's. But still, I noticed that most of his friends use Ralph too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So that was right before World War II started, and
Yeah.
basically Pearl Harbor. Do you remember much about
Absolutely,
that day, December 7th?
I absolutely do.
1941?
I remember that very well, and we had friends over for dinner. Of course, we were living in McPherson by this time. The company transferred Ralph from Topeka to McPherson.
Which company did he work for then?
Well, it was called Bankers Investment Company, and it actually was a loan company, among other things, but also a savings, whatever. I was trying to think, Ralph had to register for the draft. See, the war was looming. I think that was 1939. As I say, Rod was born in 1940. And then, but it was 2 more years before Ralph had to go to the service. He had volunteered for the Navy. No, he didn't. He was drafted, but he chose the Navy as the part of the service he wanted to work in. And so then I moved to Topeka and lived with my sister, who had a daughter the same age as my son. And that was kind of a fun, though miserable time for those who weren't there. It was kind of
And
fun.
which sister was this?
Dorothy.
So, and
My
Chris
older sister.
was in the war also then?
Yeah, he also
Okay.
was in the Navy.
So they were at the same time, they were.
And she had a house in Topeka. We were just renting a house. It was a nice little house, but gee, they wanted $6,000 for it. So
To buy the house?
Oh yeah, so we
Not per month.
we weren't going to spend that kind of money because we didn't know that that was the smart thing for
Sure.
us to do at that time. Because houses had been selling for like a house like this would be, and like that would be, $2,500 or $3,000 in those days. Oh, money has a much different
Sure.
meaning now from what it had in those days.
Yeah.
Hey, have I stopped? How much now? What? more?
How about?
Did you have any other children?
Yeah. maybe Grandma Val. We could throw her in here.
I wish I had just made that one. before I came over here.